The Wyoming Rental Agreement. In this video, we will tell you about the most noteworthy aspects of rental agreements in the state of Wyoming. What is a rental agreement? A rental agreement, or a lease, is a document that outlines the arrangement between two parties regarding a property rental. The one who's paying rent is called a tenant, while the owner of the property, who lets the other party use it under certain conditions, is called a landlord. The parties may also be called a lessor and lessee. Typically, a rental agreement lasts for 6 or 12 months, with rent being paid every month or every week. There is one federal disclosure that works for all lease agreements in the United States. This is called the lead disclosure, and it requires the landlord to tell the tenant about all known lead paint hazards. They should also provide the state-approved version of the pamphlet, Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home. However, this requirement applies to not all types of residential dwellings. Required disclosures. Apart from the above-mentioned disclosure, the landlord in Wyoming also has to include in a lease agreement the information on whether any portion of a deposit is non-refundable. Written notice of this fact shall also be provided to the tenant at the time the deposit is taken by the owner of the premises. Security deposits. In the state of Wyoming, only the sky is the limit when it comes to the security deposit in a lease agreement. The landlord can use the deposit to pay unpaid rent or repair any property damages caused by the tenant after conducting an inspection for damages on the premise. The deposit should be returned by the landlord within 30 days after the termination of the rental agreement or 15 days after the landlord receives the tenant's new mailing address, whichever occurs later. If there is any damage to the premises, the deposit should be returned within 30 days. The landlord who intentionally fails to return the security deposit along with the itemized statement of damages might have to return to the tenant the full deposit and court costs. Landlord access. The Wyoming statutes do not maintain any entry standards regarding the landlord's access. This means that the landlord may enter the tenant's dwelling unit without their permission. Termination of agreement. The Wyoming statutes don't set any specific requirements for parties in the lease regarding sending the notice of termination. However, a 30-day termination notice is recommended for a month-to-month lease by either party. Notices for non-payment and non-compliance. If the tenant fails to pay rent or breaches other provision of the lease, Wyoming law requires the landlord to send at least a 3-day notice to pay the rent, repair the waste, or otherwise comply with the lease, or quit. If the landlord fails to correct the conditions on the premises upon the tenant's requests, no less than a 10-day notice and no more than a 20-day notice of termination should be sent to the tenant.